Georgia's defense and Alabama's offense, I can't pretend to even worry that much. Their production levels are pretty nasty heading into the offseason until they actually put something tougher. Excuse me, until they actually put something together in those units that are less than elite, I'll struggle to worry too much. That was Bill Conley, who is sort of a cult favorite from ESPN, a numbers guy, talking about the Georgia defense, the Alabama offense. Their production levels are pretty nasty heading into the offseason. This is a Georgia defense that very well could deal with that Alabama offense soon. I mean, meaning the end of the season. We know the two teams won't play one another going into the 2021 season like we knew that they would in 2020. The Dogs swap out Alabama for Arkansas, and the Gators will host Alabama. But this Georgia defense, when you take a look at it, with a lot of guys coming back, obviously Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, those two keys to the Georgia defensive line really are going to be very important players. Channing Tindall, Quay Walker, Adam Anderson. Adam Anderson is going to have a lot more pressure to get the job done in terms of pressuring the quarterback. And then just guys everywhere on this team. Those are just the seniors coming back that I was talking about. But you got Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, Trayvon Walker, Jamel Walthour, Jalen Carter. Stackhouse played a lot this past season. Let's just see what happens with Mikael Sherman. The secondary did lose 3 guys, but several people coming back, including Lewis Seen. Keely Ringo will make his appearance. And Latavius Brini and Chris Smith, 2 guys that didn't play a lot when they were younger, are going to be seniors in 2021. I think Chris Smith is a senior. Brini is for sure. This defense is back. I'm not sure it's as good as it has been in the past, the Georgia defense. I'm not sure. I don't know. The question is going to be, with the addition of some of these players like Sori and Mondon, what happens there with those guys at the linebacker spot? And then you've got Green and Daniel, who could enter into the equation in the secondary. Is this defense going to be as nasty as it's been in the past? It might be. I mean, with the exception of Azeez Ojulari, there weren't a lot of individual, high-level NFL draft picks that were on this defense in 2020. So this 21 defense is returning a lot of the players that were key to the season. I mean, Jordan Davis's return alone sets in stone what will be one of the most difficult defensive lines to deal with in the country. When you think about him and Devontae both coming back, that's 2 of the 3 guys you need. Nevertheless, Trayvon Walker, who is exceptionally good, and then guys like Nolan Smith rotating in there. I mean, I do think you have a question mark to some degree about who will pressure the passer. But with Adam Anderson, as well as Nolan, and just the Channing Tindall, Quay Walker, I mean, there's a lot of guys on this team. They don't have that one particular pass rusher, but that's okay. I mean, you can get away with having the whole team be a problem. But Azeez really did, over time, he was a real issue for everyone. I mean, when you're thinking about Tennessee, the game-changing plays Georgia made in that game, some of that was from Azeez. Obviously, the Cincinnati game, Azeez was very active. Can Nolan be that guy? Or is it going to be Adam Anderson, who sort of appears on the scene and really is difficult and hard to deal with? Sori and Mondon are both exceptionally good young players. I just don't know if they will immediately be great pass rushers. I've left out Jalen Carter, who was a very good player for Georgia as a freshman. This defense is legit for sure. Now, they're going to be playing against the Clemson offense to kick the season off. That's certainly legit as well. I mean, Clemson's offense has got a lot of moving parts that they're going to have to get right coming into the season. But after that, there's just not a lot of explosion on this schedule that Georgia deals with. I mean, UAB, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, 2 of the 3 of those teams with brand new head coaches. Arkansas coming to town could be challenging physically, and then you've got to go to Auburn. Auburn, it feels like they have pieces to the puzzle, particularly with Tank Bigsby. Kentucky's going to have a hard time scoring on Georgia. Florida is turning over almost everything on offense. Missouri, are the Missouri Tigers a team that people get, concerned about on the offensive side of things? Tennessee, no, I just don't see it. Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech. I mean, Auburn, maybe Missouri. Obviously, Florida has got players, but Clemson is going to be the biggest challenge for this Georgia defense in the regular season. It seems like it's so hard to prognosticate what's going to happen before the teams actually even enter the field. But when you just, almost no one ran on this Georgia team. I mean, Alabama did. I think that's about it. Florida ran enough, but no, I mean, nobody's going for 200 something yards consistently against this defense. I mean, Kentucky had a hard time running. Missouri, Tennessee, Auburn had a hard time running against Georgia. Arkansas, I think, ran enough to be dangerous. South Carolina couldn't run at all. So, if you're Clemson and you're coming into this game, or you're whoever, it doesn't matter. How hard is it going to be to run on this defense that Bill Connelly says is pretty nasty? I think that's a good question, because if you're not running, it's hard to just throw the ball all the time. I mean, people will say, well, what about the Florida? Florida ran on Georgia enough last year. I mean, it was enough that, you could be, it could be challenging for Georgia to stop the run against the Gators last year. But when Georgia controlled the run game, they really were very difficult to deal with as a defense. You just go back to a season ago and look at the results in terms of scoring, and that was a direct relation to if you could run or not. I mean, Arkansas ran enough. Auburn couldn't run at all. Those two teams scored a combined 16 points. Tennessee scored 14 points on offense. They ran, but it wasn't effective. Alabama scored 41. They were effective for sure running the ball against Georgia. It wasn't crazy, but it was enough. Kentucky couldn't run it. Florida ran enough. Florida ran enough to where they could. They didn't. I mean, Georgia still had the most run yardage, if my memory serves correct. But they ran enough to where throwing it worked. They weren't so concerned with running the ball. Of course, Mississippi State didn't run at all. South Carolina couldn't run. Missouri had a very hard time running. And Cincinnati had over 100 yards, if I'm not mistaken. But the problem in that game was they weren't consistent in the run game to make everything work. They had that one explosive run, which totally counts. But they just could not consistently move the ball on the Georgia defense. It was not ideal, needless to say. I'm trying to go to the box score. Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati had 100 yards rushing. That's not the end of the world, but it wasn't enough. And that's what I wonder about when guys like Bill Connelly, who don't care. They're not in this to say, oh, Georgia's good or bad. They're just saying, again, Georgia's defense and Alabama's offense, I can't pretend to even worry about that much. Their production levels are pretty nasty heading into the offseason. Until they actually put something together in those units that are less than elite, I'll struggle to worry much about it. I mean, when you think back in Kirby's time at Georgia, and I'm going off the top of my head here, last year you had Alabama and Florida score 40 on Georgia. A season before that, you had the LSU game, who did not score 40. You had, it's not like 40 is the line at which you should determine what is a good defense and what is not. But certainly in those games, Georgia was dealing with some very high explosive offenses. The season before that, in 2018, Alabama scored 35. I think LSU scored 38 or whatever it was, 37 maybe. And then the year before that, you had Oklahoma score 48 and Auburn scored, I think, 41. So you do have it about twice a year where you're going to have to score 40 or more to win. They did that, Georgia, against Oklahoma. They did not do that in the other games that I mentioned. They lost those games. So this Georgia defense, certainly the real challenge is going to be Clemson. And then Auburn and Florida are certainly going to be challenges as well. I do wonder if Arkansas's offense is going to be powerful enough, swapping out quarterbacks and making some changes to the run game. But Arkansas is going to try to run it as much as possible. That can be challenging, particularly if you don't stop the run. But with this defense at Georgia, it's hard to see that they're going to struggle consistently stopping the run. In a game, sure. The entire season, I don't buy that. And that's probably why someone like Bill Connelly is calling them nasty. Let's talk about this a little bit more over on dogpost.com. We'll see you over on the website.